Jonathan Brennan is an artist living and working in Belfast since 2012. Jonathan works with a variety of visual media, and digital technology plays a role in his process for creating work. He is preoccupied by the relationship between digital and traditional techniques and the values we impose on them. Jonathan's work is drawn towards landscapes as a subject matter, and he is fascinated by how our urban and rural areas rub against each other in the makeup of our city. And it's a pleasure to be joined by Jonathan here this afternoon. Jonathan, I would like you to begin by just giving us a broad overview into your interests and work as an artist working in the community here in Belfast.
Hi Connor, thanks. Good to talk in these strange times with other human beings of my own age. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, and when I use the word multidisciplinary, it's because I sort of dabble in a lot of different areas in film, in video, in printmaking a lot at the moment, in paint and photography, and do a bit of blogging, do a bit of writing. So, and sometimes, it's something getting better at summarizing what I do, because sometimes you kind of look back and it only makes sense after you've done it. But I mean, we met a few years ago. I was doing a project on alleyways in Belfast, or entries, people call them here. And I guess that was, looking back, it was to do with sort of just looking at beyond the obvious, looking at the everyday, but just having a closer look. And this idea that you can have sort of micro adventures that you can be inspired by what's on your doorstep. You don't need to go fly off to fancy locations. And so that's something that interests me, and it's kind of carried on into other work. I'm supposed to be working on a similar project now, looking at urban rivers, even something that's even more neglected or literally onto the surface in many cases. So I guess it's slightly environmental, slightly it's vaguely political, in that I want people to just maybe look closer and be aware of the forces that shape what they do. And now's an interesting time. I mean, a lot of people do have a lot of time out, so maybe they're hopefully thinking about those things and reassessing, or just kind of struggling from day to day.
And Jonathan, how has the current pandemic impacted on your ability to create artwork? Have you found that it's either afforded you more time to be creative, or has it limited your creative output?
Well, I have to preface it all by saying that I'm lucky. I have my partner, my wife. She has a job, and she's able to work from home at the moment. And so almost any time I go to complain or say something that's affecting me, I go, "No, shut up. You're lucky." But there's probably a name for that condition as well. So I kind of feel like I can't complain. In terms of how it's impacted me, my studio closed, the Belfast Print Workshop closed, and then we were sort of living, hoping that the vault would stay open for a bit. It did, but no, we've had to close the vault as well. So there was a couple of occasions to go in and grab stuff, any equipment that you might need to be able to work from home. So I can kind of do little things. I can do minimal printmaking, and but I have to say, a lot of the stuff I took from the studio is still in my car. I just feel like I have this block. I don't know willpower. Anytime, it sounds like I'm complaining, but I'm just sort of describing how I feel. I'm very lucky to have a garden. I know people. I've got friends around Europe who are stuck in apartment blocks, and people in Spain. And so, but I kind of feel like I can't face it. And the other thing that's happening is that I have 3 kids who are all in primary school. So time-wise as well, it's funny. I mean, people are kind of suffering in different ways. So I know people who live on their own. I've got some family members who live on their own, and they're feeling the loneliest. They're realizing what a social person they are and how much things have changed. But also they're finding a lot of spare time to do stuff and take up new hobbies and fill their days. I'm the opposite. The schools are closed, so I would have had a certain block of time every day in which to do work, where I'd complete quiet and go to my studio. And now I don't have that anymore. So that's kind of how it's affecting me. But I'm trying to fight it. I'm doing sort of little bits of drawing and sort of building it in. The homeschooling is interesting, that the work comes in on computers and iPads, and I can't just leave them to. I have to sort of sit with them for a bit. But then we do sort of creative time as well. So the last bit of printmaking I did was a line-up class with my kids. And in some ways that's good. I've taught so many line-up classes, but I've never actually sat down and done it with my own kids. It's something I've always meant to do, but so that's a positive there. I've seen a couple of sort of interviews with artists, and some people saying, this is the dystopian future that is actually not that bad. We're stuck at home. That's about it. And in some ways, all you're asked to do is to stay at home.
Your work is very much centred on the relationship between rural and urban areas. Why does this simulate such an interest in you as an artist?
I'll give you some sort of context there. One of the projects that I successfully got some funding from the Arts Council to do this year was a variation on a film I made a few years ago. Well, not a variation, but a sort of similar investigation. This time not looking at alleyways and entries, but looking at rivers. And one of my approaches involves going out into the community, identifying people and identifying houses because I don't know who lives in them, and seeing what relationship they have to, say, the river. Is it something they ever think about? Is it something they engage with? Is it something they don't like, they're worried about, scared about? But I would drop letters into people's letterboxes and say, describe what I'm doing, a bit of background of who I am. And it's an approach that worked well for my alleyway project. A lot of people actually got back in touch. And then we would arrange to do an interview. I would go to their house, we'd have a chat. So that's so I just can't do that now. That was something I was going to do in March, April, May. And you can't do it by keeping 2 meters from people. You can't be out for any other reason than a bit of exercise if I'm going around with a camera or sound recorder. So I guess, so that's really knocked that on the head. And by the time maybe the restrictions have lifted, my kids will be I love my kids, but they'll be on their school holidays, so I won't be able to. That was the time I was going to use for editing, so that's a very specific impact. So in terms of what am I going to do to adapt, actually I got onto this feeling of, okay, I'll do the research part first. I can read some books, and then as the sort of lockdown gets extended, the walls are closing in, and say, okay, I can't film, I can't talk to people, I can't interview. So at some point I will have to find a way around that. But I got in touch with the Arts Council and I asked for an extension because I'm supposed to have this all done by the end of September, and they were very understanding. I'm sure they kept getting a lot of calls. They've given me sort of a 4-month extension on that. So hopefully, and then they're probably suggesting things that I don't really want to consider, but might be an eventuality. Do I really need to go to these people's houses? I mean, I feel like I do. I need to build up a rapport with people who I never met before, and I'm creeping around the back of their house looking at the river. And, it's you need to have a bit of face-to-face contact and put people at their ease and get them talking and get them open. I'm sure as an interview, that. So they were suggesting doing Zoom calls, and I mean, maybe that's what I'll have to do. There's things around audio quality and that human contact that,
Sand the block a little bit, give it a little bit of texture.
How important is social interaction for you, particularly when delivering a community-based project, which is very much centred on the lived experience of the participants?
Stubborn bits.
And just in terms of community-led art projects, how important is that process of taking someone who maybe doesn't engage with an art form, drawing out their ideas and their views, and to create a final piece of work? Can the process sometimes be overlooked?
In the last year or so, I've been doing more community work, and we worked on that project together. And I was just thinking this morning, this? Maybe it's not a block, maybe it's just lazy, But why aren't they creative work? And the things that kind of drive me. One of the things that has increasingly driven me is just having that contact with people. So we worked on a project around inheritance and the city, and what kind of city we're passing on to the next generation in terms of ecology and environment. And I met with the group, 6-7 times, and there's a relationship you build up, and they sort of inspire you in return, and they have ideas that you didn't think of, and that's a sort of driving force.
I didn't really know how it works.
In terms of I've seen conversations online where people go, "Oh, you're a creative. That's great for you. Now you've got so much time. You should be creating all the time." And somebody spoke to an artist and said, "You said you're bored. I can't understand how you're bored. You're a creative person. Aren't you supposed to be creating?" So there's a slight misunderstanding about how things get made.
My earrings.
You make these?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And I was really this in
Does a vacant Belfast city centre stimulate an interest in you? As we had mentioned before, your work's very much centred towards urban and rural landscapes, but do you feel a responsibility to sort of creatively document the ongoing pandemic and the impact it's having on the cityscape here in Belfast?
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe I should. Yeah, I suppose in the house so much. There's times where I haven't left the perimeter of the house for like a week. And you almost feel like you're developing a complex about going outside. And I'm always trying not to pass that on to the kids as well. They didn't want to go outside either. But yeah, I guess something inside me sort of broke recently. But I've been meaning to get out on my bike, and I got out a couple of times recently. And yeah, definitely see little things like dandelions growing up on the pavements everywhere. That's something that really bugs me, is that places like the Greenway and any sort of landscaped, some of these, I call them sort of fictive landscapes, usually sprayed by chemicals, and of course they devastating effects on wildlife and local wildlife, and I know foragers who used to forage for wild garlic on the Greenway, and now the whole thing's been sprayed. This is in East Belfast. This is the Conver Greenway. But I cycled down to this area called, I think it's destined to become a park. It's called the Giants Park. It's in a sort of dockland area. I think it's probably reclaimed land. It was probably the city dump at one point. But I went in, had a look around, and that felt. I mean, that seemed like another place that I've been meaning to go for 2-3 years as well. It's somewhere I spotted from Cave Hill when I first arrived here. I'm like, what is that huge empty area that you're not allowed into? I saw a bird that was sort of hovering in midair, its wings flapping almost like a hummingbird, and this mad twittering. And I looked it up. Apparently, it was a skylark. I'd never seen a skylark before. There were beaches down there that were entirely made of shells, cockle shells, and I noticed more people using back alleyways as well, because they're keen to avoid just the social distancing thing. You know, it's hard to keep 2 meters from people on a narrow path. Mm-hmm. So even those areas are getting busier. But yeah, that's a good point. We should say that it's essential work for the future generations to document this this period. Yeah, I mean, we live it through history in some ways.
Does the current pandemic offer us an opportunity to assess how artists engage with the public, and how we can maybe develop a more substantial and coherent relationship between the public and the creative sector, and particularly community artists such as yourselves?
My sincere hope is that we learn something from this and take the time to reassess. Read an article there recently saying, when this is over, get ready for the biggest gaslighting, or I wasn't familiar with that term, but get ready to be told that, it wasn't that bad, we were only closed for a few months. Things that look like they were chaotic or messed up, don't worry, that was just tentative mistakes at the beginning. And that you'll be sold your old lifestyle again, that big brands are ready to move in to make you sort of brainwash you into forgetting this stuff has ever happened, and eager to get back to the way we were. I hope we learn. I hope we take this opportunity to reassess what's important and what we don't need. Personally, I get about 5 weeks to the gallon now on the car. I used to be racing all over the city on my car, mostly delivering children to various activities. That's something I don't miss at all. I would be a cyclist most of the time anyway, so seeing more bikes on the streets is wonderful. Also, seeing governments do what they said was impossible. We can't have carbon emissions, and then it just happened just like that. Is really interesting, and it sort of shines a light on on what priorities are, and what where the focus should be. And also, it's interesting to see how scientists and experts are being sort of reappraised, or we had that famous quote from Michael Gove who said, we don't want to listen to the experts, we're sick of experts. And now every government spokesman is saying, our policy is now, it's based on the science, it's based on the data, it's based on the medical evidence. And wouldn't that be wonderful if that was the same approach if used towards climate change? The scientists are saying this, therefore our policies are going to be this. And people said we couldn't, reduce our emissions. It's just, it's shown those things up to be falsehoods, and that, I guess it's kind of looking on the upside of this.
Is it possible that once we come out of this period of prolonged lockdown and limited social interaction and movement, that the public might have a reinvigorated sense of appreciation for the arts?
Yeah, in some ways everyone is, not being forced, but people are, yeah, they're, I mean, things like gardening, cooking, but also, yeah, making art, doing these sort of Instagram challenges, and yeah, I mean, more people are taking up hobbies, and it's kind of like sometimes when I give classes, and people sort of subscribe to attend them in the print workshop, and there's a general willingness and readiness and expectation of what they're going to do. But sometimes working in communities, sometimes people are a bit skeptical, or actually they're probably just thinking, no, I can't do it, I don't do art, and yet sort of encourage them and show them different ways or different approaches, and that's nothing to be scared about. But I can totally understand the fear. They may not have done any art since primary school, and maybe some offhand comment at some point in their lives means they turn them off art for life. And so that's a scenario in which I'm convincing them that there is a value in doing it, and then they sort of hopefully will get something out of it. And now this pandemic is forcing people to, well, you've got more time on your hands and you're taking up things like that as well. It's sort of like another external force encouraging you to do things. But yeah, I hope it has a wider impact. I was watching a program on Belfast Harbour the other night. Got these cruise ships coming in, tourists visiting from the States and from other parts of the world, and they're coming here to see something uniquely Belfast, something cultural, something. They're going to galleries, they're going to museums. They want to see some local bars, and they're not coming here to go to H&M and Zara and shops that you find every other place, like high streets across the UK, just carbon copies of each other. So, I mean, I've always felt strongly about that. Maybe some of that. Maybe we'll see some bigger changes, and as you say, like a wider appreciation of what culture has to offer people, and what in life enriches our lives.
And Jonathan, do you have any tips or advice on how individuals and families can stay creative during the lockdown?
Well, my tip would mainly be that everybody. It sounds like a cliche, but everyone is creative in some kind of way. And there's a lot of people that I'm on several WhatsApp groups. You have 3 kids, and then that's 3 WhatsApp groups. That's hundreds of parents panicking over the sort of homeschooling thing. And I kind of think, yeah, well, I mean, do what you can, but think about the skills that you have that you could pass on to your own children that you never normally have time to do. And that's sort of what I've been doing. But for me, I'm creative, and that's my life and that's my work. I'm not very sporty. I do cycling, but it's mainly entertainment. So there's probably dozens of ways on videos and tutorials online for parents who are stuck. So I would say just look at the skills that you have. You could be a good. My daughter has been fascinated by PowerPoint recently. God forbid, but so my wife's been showing her how to do presentations and things like that. We're running slides together. The online museum visits, I've never looked at those before, but some of them are quite amazing. My son was really into the Smithsonian Museum, where you can, in inverted commas, walk around and zoom in on anything. And it's almost like you're there, you're walking over to something and reading the caption on the dinosaur. And I don't know. I think passing on skills. If you play an instrument, and you probably never. You hear about music teachers who never really. Oh, well, yeah, we do a bit of piano at home. I would say just look at. Look within yourself.
Could the COVID-19 pandemic provide a new context to your work, and in particular those works which focus on the relationship between rural and urban landscapes?
It's all consuming at the moment. I definitely think there'll be a change, and that sort of surrounded my work, where I think about looking again, looking at what you don't look at, looking at the world with fresh eyes. I think there'll be degrees of consciousness over how much it has affected your work. I think it's weird we're in a situation where it affects everyone. It's not like you wouldn't believe what happened to me. We're all, well, as I said before, people are suffering. Or maybe I didn't, but people are suffering in different ways. It's interesting to see how it's affecting different people, and I guess artists are no exception, and you'll find that as well. Yeah, things will evolve. Things are evolving quickly. There was a sort of a great flurry of activity at the start, and so much sort of online activity and concerts, and that almost seems unsustainable. So it's interesting to see where things are going to go and how it does affect art. I think its tendrils will be felt in every aspect of creativity and work after. Yeah.
Jonathan, it was a pleasure speaking with you here this afternoon, and we hope you keep well and safe. And thanks again for your time.
Great, and I look forward to seeing the exhibition we worked on together. So it was a shame that it had to be postponed, but yeah.